Have you have you ever wondered what that cheesy stuff is on your new baby, or maybe that you've seen on other babies soon after they're born? It seems that the medical world just thinks it's something toxic that just needs to be washed away as soon as possible. But is it really toxic? Does it really need to be washed away? What is its purpose? It's got to be there for something, right? Why do some babies have it and others don't? Today, we are going to dive into the topic of something called Vernix Caseosa. Usually, you'll just hear it called Vernix. Let's dive in. Are you a Christian woman yearning for a beautiful, joyful pregnancy and birth with a focus on God, not medical tests? Are you worried the birth you want isn't possible and you're tired of being treated like an accident waiting to happen? Hey, Mama, I'm Lori, host of Your Birth God's Way. I'm a certified nurse midwife now, but I wasn't always. After working for nearly 20 years in the broken maternity system, I too was in your shoes, wondering how I could have the birth I wanted and that I felt God meant for me to have. I found a secret that has actually been known since the beginning of time. God's way is the best way. Spoiler alert, God made us and our babies, and He knows us best. He designed us perfectly for pregnancy, birth, and nourishing our babies after birth, if we work with His design and not against it. In this podcast, you'll learn how to be healthy and have joy during this time of life that will be over before you know it. So if you're ready to reclaim your birth and your babies for His glory, go turn on a few episodes of Bluey for that little one on your hip so you can put the focus back on you for a few minutes with me. All right, it is review time first. As always, I want to thank each and every one of you who have taken the time to leave me a review over on Apple Podcasts. And if you haven't, this is my weekly asking of you to take a minute and do it. It helps me so much. It helps me to find other moms like you, and it just encourages me to know that I'm helping you guys out there. Today's review comes from, it's another one of those names that I really don't know how to pronounce it. It's just some letters. But it was left back in January, and it says, incredible podcast for new mamas and seasoned mamas. As a mom of 4 and expecting number 5, this podcast continues to be a godsend, both prepping for my labor and for postpartum. The research and biblical truth is so helpful in continuing my education and prepping adequately for both. I've had 3 hospital births and 1 birth center birth, 1 medicated and 3 unmedicated. I would encourage anyone expecting a baby or supporting a mom having a baby to listen. Thank you so much to whoever was so kind to leave that review for me. And again, if you haven't left me a review yet, I ask that you would please do that. It doesn't cost you a thing. It'll only take you about 30 seconds. Just hop over on Apple Podcasts, either on your phone, your iPad, not iMac. That's not the right thing. That's old, right? Your MacBook, or your friends if you don't have one. You can leave reviews on other places as well. It's just that something about the Apple Podcast reviews helps the most. So that's all I got to say about that. All right, quick note. For those of you watching on YouTube, you will notice that I have my hair up in a ponytail and I am in sweats and stuff. I'm waiting on a baby right now as I record this, so forgive me. This is real life. Second of all, I've had several messages from you guys saying that you couldn't get to my older episodes on your podcast app. I did a little research, figured out why that was, got it fixed. So now you can go on podcast apps. Everyone I've looked at, they're all there now. I've looked at Spotify, Podbean, and Apple Podcasts, and all of the older episodes are there now. So go back and check those out. There's some really good episodes. There's episodes on nutrition, boundaries, postpartum depression, real bread with Sue Becker, for those of you who know who she is, fear, faith, testing, both in pregnancy and postpartum and babies and all that kind of stuff. Belly mapping, positioning, all kinds of stuff in those older episodes. So just because they're, some of them 2 years old now, they're still really good information. So go check those out, especially if you're new to the podcast and maybe you weren't around when those were all posted. Go back and check those out. There's lots and lots of good stuff back there. Okay. Now, we have all seen babies who are born with this thick white stuff all over them, right? Sometimes it's just kind of like a real smooth kind of spattering of it. Sometimes it's super thick. What is this stuff? Well, it is called Vernix. Vernix Caseosa is the full name of it. And it is something that God put there. And we're going to learn here in a minute about all that's in there. You might actually think that it's scary or maybe even bad, because if you've given birth at a hospital, you've probably seen a nurse come in with a blanket or a towel or something and start scrubbing your baby to try to get the stuff off. But should they do that? That's the real question. Is that really what needs to be done? Or is there a need to leave it there? That's what we're going to talk about today. First of all, what is Vernix? Well, Vernix is the white cheesy substance that you do see on some babies. I would venture to say these days, most babies, when they're born. That substance is about 80% water, 10% lipids, like a fatty substance, and 10% proteins of various types. There are so many decisions that you have to make during pregnancy and birth that you shouldn't have to make, but you do. We live in a world that has medicalized a beautiful natural process, and I know it can feel overwhelming to try to sort through it all, but you do not have to walk this road alone. I created my online Christian childbirth education course to give you all the information that you need to make solid decisions you can feel confident about, while helping you to honor the process God created you to walk through without feeling like you're an accident waiting to happen. I leave no stone unturned in this 8-module course with about 20 hours of education. When you join the course, you'll also get access to a monthly meeting with me where I answer your questions live. You won't have to worry about getting answers that are filtered through practice policy or insurance directives. If you don't know me, I'm Lori Morris, and I'm a certified nurse midwife with over 20 years of experience as a nurse and midwife in both the medical and natural birth world. So in this course, you'll get my experience combined with a Christian perspective without an agenda other than to help you have a beautiful birth God's way, like you deserve. You simply can't find another course with this kind of balance out there. To learn more or to sign up, go to go.yourbirthgodsway.com and click on the online Christian Childbirth Education course button. There is no other course out there like this. There are relaxation tracks in it to use before and during labor. There's tons of information about how to stay low risk while navigating the onslaught of standard medical interventions that are going to be offered to you during your pregnancy. There's affirmation cards to help you stay focused both during pregnancy and during birth. There's postpartum information. There's information about how to establish breastfeeding and so much more. Plus, there's the live question and answer sessions every month to cover anything that you might need beyond the course content. You will be prepared for pregnancy, birth, and beyond when you take this course. So come join me. Go to go.yourbirthgodsway.com right now. This substance coats a baby's skin while it is in utero, because when a baby is inside, it's floating in water. And if you've ever gone swimming before for a long time, you come out, your skin is kind of dried out, it's wrinkly and all that kind of stuff, because that water, being exposed to it for a long time, actually can pull some of the water out of your skin. And so this substance is protecting the baby, keeping the baby's skin balanced and protected from water, from the water they're floating in, the amniotic fluid, for all these months. It is produced throughout the pregnancy, but it really amps up in the 3rd trimester. What is it for? Well, I mentioned one thing. It's for skin protection, especially immature skin protection, because there are certain different parts of the skin that develop at different times during the pregnancy, throughout the pregnancy, and that water that they're floating in is more, I don't want to say harmful, but that really probably is a term, earlier on through the end. So that is it's kind of like a lotion of sorts that is protecting them and keeping that skin protected from the fluid all through the pregnancy. Those proteins I mentioned, 39% of the proteins in Vernix are part of the fetal innate, that means built-in, immune system. How cool is that? I found that particular fact in a study that I linked down in the show notes if you want to go read more about it. And 29% of the proteins in the Vernix are direct antimicrobial properties. Anti meaning against, microbial meaning microbes, which are bacteria. And in this case, we want to think about harmful bacteria. So inside of this stuff that the babies are born with on their skin, there is antimicrobial properties, which is protecting them from infection. Pretty neat, right? It's almost like God knew what those babies needed, right? Interestingly enough, it also helps with fetal development. In some way, it acts as a communicator between the baby's internal organs and the viscera that are being produced on the inside and the amniotic fluid on the outside. It even communicates with lung surfactant, which is the substance that is made towards the end of pregnancy that will allow the baby's lungs to stay open after the baby is born. So maybe that plays some role in the trigger for babies to, or for moms to go into labor when the baby is ready. We really don't fully understand that, but we do know that it helps with fetal development in some way and it plays a communicating role. It also helps with skin formation itself because it helps to moisturize and hydrate the skin cells lying underneath it so that the skin develops in a healthy way. It helps with thermoregulation, especially after birth, because if you step out of the shower, right? You've been in this nice warm fluid, you step out of the shower into cold air, all of a sudden you're really cold, even though you've been in hot water, right? Same goes for babies. When they're born, they come out of this fluid they've been in where it's nice and warm, they come out into cold air. That vernix being present on their skin helps them not to get quite as cold from that air when we help to protect them with blankets and things like that to protect them from the cold air. That thermoregulation they get from the vernix also helps to fill that function. As I mentioned, there are antimicrobial aspects to the vernix. It is full of fun word, right? Immunological factors that help the skin flora develop. Flora is the natural, normal, healthy bacteria that skin needs on it to fight off the bad bacteria. So that vernix helps that flora to develop properly. And it also, as I mentioned, helps to protect the baby's skin from pathogens. Pathogens are the bad bacteria, flora is the good bacteria. So that balance, having lots of that good flora, is what's going to protect your baby from any kind of infections, either during the birth process or immediately after. And maintaining it on the skin. Here's a kicker, okay? Because like I said earlier, when you give birth in a hospital, it's like almost immediately they start wiping it off and trying to get rid of it or giving your baby a bath or whatever else. But if we will maintain that vernix on the skin, it might even decrease hospital-acquired infections that can come from just being in the hospital because that's the only place these bacteria live. Additionally, it's really good for wound healing. Now, hopefully your baby doesn't have any wounds, but maybe you do. Maybe your husband does. When you get it on your hands, don't go wash it off like it's toxic. Rub it in or rub it into any kind of wounds you might have. It's really, really good for healing. Of course, assuming there's no meconium or anything like that in it. We're not going to talk about that too much today, but as long as this baby was born just a normal birth with no meconium or anything like that, don't wash it off your hands. This stuff is great and it has all those same properties it's helping the baby with. It'll help your skin as well. It also is a lubricant for delivery. So baby's going through this really squishy place, right? And you can imagine there might be some friction there. That vernix helps to prevent or to reduce the amount of friction that he or she's going to encounter in the vaginal canal. It also contributes to that new baby smell that we've all smelled. And no, I'm not talking about Johnson's baby wash. I'm talking about the baby smell. And what that smell does is it enhances the bonding between mom and baby, which is really, really cool. In addition to the skin flora I mentioned earlier, it's also thought to play a role in the gut flora. That is the normal bacteria, the good bacteria that we need present in our gut to help keep things in balance. And a baby's vernix has been in the fluid, they've been swallowing it, it's been going down into their gut. It starts to help start that colonization process that needs to happen in the gut. So does this stuff, this vernix, need to be washed or wiped away? Well, I'm sure you figured this out by now. The answer is no, it does not. It's bad enough that most hospitals are giving babies baths in toxic baby wash, whether it be Johnson & Johnson's, like I mentioned a minute ago, or some other off-brand, that these highly perfumed, highly chemical-laden toxic bath washes. Please, by the way, don't buy these for your babies. That's a different topic for a different day, but this stuff is toxic. So it's bad enough they're using that stuff anyway, but they're using it to wash away the substance that God put there to nourish the baby's skin. It is there for a reason. And while we understand many of the reasons, there's probably even more that we don't know about. God knows a whole lot more than we do. He knows a whole lot more about what our babies need than we do. And when we wash this substance away, we are circumventing a beautiful thing He put there to help our babies. So let it soak in. I don't know if you know this or not, but you actually do not have to give your baby a bath on day 1 or hour 1 or hour 2 or 3. It's not a requirement. You can wait for days, even a week or so, if they're not soiled. And even if they are soiled, you can just wipe off the place that got soiled. This thought that a baby needs a bath right away. I'm not really sure what the origin of it is, but I do know that it's not what's best for our babies. All 3 of my babies, I want to say it was past a week before I ever gave them a bath. I made sure every bit of that Vernix was soaked in. So obviously, you're going to have to make the decision for yourself. Some of you, it's going to bother you more than others seeing this on your baby. But if I can encourage you to do anything, it is to give that baby time to soak in that Vernix on their own and let them have the benefit of their own substance that's going to help their own skin to be healthy. They are not dirty. It is not a dirty substance. And if it gets on you, rub it into your skin. It's just as beneficial for you. Did you happen to have a baby that had no Vernix? Well, babies tend to lose their Vernix towards the end of pregnancy and as they go past their gestates. So if you had a baby at 41 weeks, 42 weeks, you may have had a baby that came out looking squeaky clean with no Vernix. That basically just means that your baby was a little further along than some of them are. Now, that being said, my baby that went the longest, which was Abigail, my third, she probably had twice as much Vernix as the other 2, and she was the latest. So that doesn't always hold true, or at least she was the latest according to what we thought she was. And I was pretty sure on her dates. But in general, if you have a baby that doesn't have a whole lot of Vernix, it's probably just a little bit later on in gestation. It's one of the things that we look for as a sign of fetal maturity or how far along they actually were after the baby was born. So if you thought you were earlier and your baby was born with no Vernix, it's actually a sign that you might have been a little bit more past your gestate than you thought. Did you have a baby that had a lot of Vernix? Well, that's great. Let that Vernix, as I said before, soak in over time. It is powerful and you only get it this one time, so use it for all it's worth. But realize that if you were induced, or you got a C-section that was scheduled based on this 39-week date, but your baby had tons and tons and tons of Vernix, you might have been a little bit earlier than you thought, okay? So did your baby have a lot of Vernix or just a little bit of Vernix? I'd love to hear from you. Let's get this conversation started over in the Facebook group or down in the YouTube comments. If you didn't know, yeah, I'm on YouTube. I know most of you listen on podcast apps, and that's where I love for you to give your reviews and that kind of thing. And I love having you there. But for those who love videos as well, most of my podcasts now are recorded in video format as well. So go over to YouTube. It's at Your Birth God's Way, or you can go youtube.com/@Your Birth God's Way. And just subscribe over there. You can see all the videos there. I'm also going to be putting up more educational videos over time as I'm able to. So be sure to follow me over there and subscribe. You can comment in the comments there. You can comment over in the Facebook group, which there's a link for that down in the description as well. Just wherever is most convenient for you. I'd love to hear from you. How much Vernix did your babies have? How did you manage it? Or if you're going to have more babies in the future, what do you want to do with it now? What's your plans? Are you going to wait a week before you do your first bath, or are you going to do it right away still? Love to hear from you. Just let me know what you think. I look forward to talking with you again next week. And again, in the meantime, let's come hang out over on Facebook or on YouTube. I'll see you next week. Real quick, if today's episode blessed you in any way, would you head over to Apple Podcasts and leave me a quick 5-star written review? It'll take you less than a minute, but it's the best thank you can give me. And it will help my show to reach more mamas just like you, so we can all find God's best for our families. I'll see you right back here in a few days.